Thanks for listening to the Clive Barker Podcast. In episode 393, Jose and Ryan are joined by artist and longtime friend and supporter Don Bertram to talk about the 2005 art book Clive Barker's Visions of Heaven and Hell, and we talk about our own collections and experience as well. This episode is available on YouTube video and podcast audio. So if you want to see all the stuff we're holding up, pointing at, and screen sharing, head over to the YouTube channel to check it out. All right, well, welcome. This is episode 393 of the Clive Barker Podcast, Visions of Heaven and Hell Plus. I guess we haven't quite set on the name yet, but we're going to talk about the 2005 Rizzoli book, Visions of Heaven and Hell, and plus other Clive Barker artwork. And we got Jose and me, and I'm Ryan, and our special guest, Don Bertram. Welcome, Don.
Good morning.
Again.
Pleased to be here. Honored to be here, as a matter of fact.
Well, thank you. Yeah. This is we're so happy to have you back again, because it's been maybe more than a year since we talked to you last, or maybe around a year.
I've been talking since. It's like, you get me started on this and I just can't shut up. So when you're passionate about something, what can you do? At least you're passionate about something, right?
Right.
I know. And you've been such a big supporter of our podcast, and our listeners probably listened to Ryan talk about your initiative and your project at the beginning of the episode, where you assist the arts and medicine project for the Dallas, Texas.
And I want to get to that, but before we do that, I did want to mention really quick that we have a sale on our TeePublic store. So check it out. If you head over to our TeePublic store there, the link is going to be on the on here on the screen. 35 up to 35% off. The t-shirts are $16, and that's only through Sunday the 26th. So that's the day that this episode airs. So check it out. We've got some cool stuff. There's Jose's design of the Baphomet shirt there, and Cenobium. We've got a couple of Cenobium shirts, and there's one for our Jericho squad.
Yes, our RPG game where you see all our characters. It's wonderful. And you also have tote bags, notebooks, stickers and stuff like that at the TeePublic store. So just check it out.
And like Jose was saying earlier, most episodes I edit in, where when I'm recording, I recorded talking about your Celebrate Imagination project, but now we get to actually talk about it together with you, which is kind of a rare thing. So I'm going to share again here, and so one really cool thing about, like we've always said, the 50% or more of the proceeds go towards the arts and medicine program. But also, and your paintings were for quite a while. They were in like over the summer and the fall, right? They were in galleries and stuff in Texas there in Pearland, but now they're back on your Etsy shop. So our listeners who aren't in Texas can buy them again, which is really cool.
Wonderful. I wish they would. I'm always painting, and I have a lot of paintings. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
I like the Froggy Went to Courtin' one. I guess I'm partial to frogs. I don't, because I already bought one from you that was a frog.
That started off a handful of frogs, but they were more realistic than yours. Yours was a little primitive, but it still worked. Thanks for donating to that too, contributing. Know where your money goes. The negative thing is about the program now is since COVID, because all my activities with the children are very intimate. They haven't opened that up yet, and because every time you turn around, there's a new variant coming out. So you can imagine a child's parents would not want somebody coming in, a different person all the time doing something. So even though the money's, and I still support it all, I still am limited on what I can do. I can go to the hospital and be an information person or take people around and make sure they get to this place or the other, but I can't really work with the children one-on-one, and that's where it's at for me.
Yeah, right, and I could see that being an issue there, because
it is.
They're tiny. Their tiny immune systems are compromised with the cancer treatments, and unfortunately makes them vulnerable to all sorts of infectious diseases. So that makes sense.
That's exactly true. And they're all they call it immunocompromised when you have to take medications that turn that system off, so it battles the cancer itself. So you're right, it makes sense. And it's just one of those things that just happened, but still I support it 100%. And that is where the money goes still. That's my passion. That's my passion.
The arts and medicine program at Texas Children's Cancer Center.
Yes, it's part of the Periwinkle Foundation.
And I see you have the chimney sweep tale cover right behind you there.
Yeah, I sure do. That is the latest book that's doing really good, and that's the original on the wall behind it. That's the actual original painting of the book. It's such a beautiful. That's really why I even published that book, was because the artist, and I got so much slack for not painting the pictures myself, but I needed a beautiful, soft. I needed a mother to paint her son. And this image worked perfect. I knew she could do it. And when she said this, I hopped right on and said I would go ahead and do this again. So yeah, there it is. And of course, COVID puts a little damper on everything. But boy, these books have done really, really well. Everybody that listens to the podcast needs to buy all the books.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All the money from the books actually goes to the children.
And Judith did a great job with the painting. It's beautiful. Really, really vibrant, and makes it seem like that the child is just staring right into your soul.
That's right. It's a beautiful little boy, and it's a close image of her son. And I knew if a mother couldn't paint her son with that loving, soft edge, then nobody could. And she certainly did it.
And you can still see also the love of the child for its mother reflected in the eyes a little bit.
Okay, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely check that out on the Etsy shop.
I would appreciate it, and the children would too.
Yeah. And
so today,
one really quick thing I was gonna say about that too is that I've when I bought mine, they're small, so they ship really well. So the shipping is not, the shipping is really reasonable, and that helps.
It is small, and the other big positive is if it's a small image, it can be put anywhere. So you can move it all over the place. I have some of these Barker images. I mean, you need a wall. You almost need a wall for them, and you run out of walls.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll get to that. Yeah. So
I like your Alien 3 that you have there too.
Oh, you know what? It's funny you should bring that up. He's always over there. It looks like that is clay. And my brother helped represent H.R. Giger down here in Texas.
Right, yeah.
Back in the day, I know I had to mention that before.
Morpheus International.
That through Morpheus on Wilshire Boulevard at the time. But believe me, I combined many trips with the Barker and the Giger thoughts in my mind. But anyway, that piece there is from a drawing that Giger did from Alien 3 that was supposed to combine a dog with the alien monster. And what you see there is this guy did such a great job for us. And I, of course, could never sell it because I'm sure 20th Century Fox or somebody would come down on me about it because they'd say that's not, that they own that image. But they never used it. They never used that. So and
it's interesting because in that movie, depending on which version you watch, it either came from a dog or it came from like a big yak sort of a beast.
Well, I think it's the dog. That's the one I always see.
Well, that's the official version, right? But then later they came out with the extended version, and it came out of that yak beast of burden thing.
That movie was a little cursed in production. They definitely had a bunch of different cuts, assembly cuts.
That was one of those things where they decided to make the movie before they even figured out what script they were going to use.
Yeah, isn't that something? And Giger is not, never has been an easy person to work with, as most artists aren't. Real serious artists, they know what they want to do. They know the time it takes, how much it's going to take. Not to mention any names, but it can take forever and ever and ever and ever. Yeah. And the same thing would happen to him. And I think that they end up dropping him on a couple of projects, but just because he does great work, but he just can't get it done timely. And time is money. Time is money.
Yeah. I remember seeing in the theater the trailer that said, "On Earth, everyone can hear you scream." It's like that's not even close to what the movie was about.
Right. Yes.
I thought it was in space. No one can hear you sing.
Well,
the original
Alien.
one, yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
this is on
Alien 3,
3.
they said on Earth, everyone can hear you scream.
Well,
And
see,
then,
there you go.
Yeah, and that made it all the way to the theaters before they switched the script around and stuff.
It's funny because I just saw Resurrection, Alien Resurrection.
Oh yeah.
And I literally a few days ago, and they do end up on Earth at the end of that movie. So spoilers. But
it's old. If they haven't seen it by now, they're not going to see it. I guarantee you.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, the ship is going back to Earth automatically. That's what they do, and they're like, oh no, we're going to Earth, and everybody's like, oh no, Earth is it's a crap place to go to, and then we see Earth at the end, and it's completely like destroyed and polluted, and the Eiffel Tower is falling over on top of Paris, and there's nothing but rubble, and it's like, what happened there? So but yeah,
it's funny you should bring that up, because I tell you, there's so many sidelines. But since this is a Clive Barker podcast, that was actually one of the last when that was showing in Houston at Tinseltown back in the day. That had to have been in the late 90s, I would think, but I can't really remember. That was one of the last times my brother had a Giger exhibit in a theater, along with my Clive exhibit in the theater, bringing Clive back into the story. And just a word, you never know. Unfortunately, during this airing, or this was a multiplex, but Resurrection was in the large theater in there. During that, they were showing some Disney films and other things like that. And Ron had the big lithograph of the Necronomicon that inspired Ridley Scott to do Alien, which is a slightly sexual image. And the theater did come to us and have us remove that from our display.
Because of the shape of its head. And
you can imagine. Now, none of the stuff was that edgy that I was showing, but Giger, you never know. You know what's all in his images.
Yeah, it's like you're scaring the straights. You got to take it down.
Yeah, it definitely was an issue, and that was a while back too.
Yeah,
there's always been an issue with Giger's work being put in public places and people complaining about it. I mean, I have that. I just recently saw also Dark Star, that documentary with Giger. It was, I think it's on Tubi or something like that. I was scrolling through. I was like, hey, here's a Giger documentary. I guess I'll watch it. And I still have my autographed copy of H.R. Giger Revealed, which was another documentary that came out. And I was lucky enough to buy one of the copies that was signed by Giger. I never got to meet him.
Oh, how cool.
But Giger was one of the artists that I got into even before I got into Clive Barker. So that's before I got into Clive Barker in his artwork, at least, because I'd seen Hellraiser back in like 88 or something, or 89. But I remember at the time I was deep into like H.R. Giger, and some other older like artists like Edward Munch and Robert, Blake. Blake, I was also big into Blake because I had gotten a copy of the Book of Urizen that was illustrated. So I was like, oh, this is great stuff.
Did you understand any of it?
Well, at the time, I don't think I got the full grasp of it, because we're talking about when I was maybe 17, 16, that kind of age. But nowadays, going back to it and knowing a lot more about, Blake's biography and his life and stuff, things kind of fall more into place and you start understanding a little bit more of the philosophy, which is kind of the same that you can say about Clive Barker artwork, right? I mean, when I got into it, I was more like, hey, this writer that I love also makes art. That's great. Let me take a look at it. And at the time, we didn't really have major art books, right? It was just maybe Imaginer 1 and 2. We had the sketches that you could see on that Shadows in Eden book.
I love that. I thumbed that so many times. It had so many little images in it. I loved it.
I know. That book was...
hold that up again? I'm going to take a screenshot. Sure. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
All right. That one's going straight to the image of the episode.
Yeah.
But so when I started actually getting into Clive Barker's artwork was when I got Shadows in Eden, and then eventually, graduating to seeing things like Illustrator, and what are the other books, Ryan, that were out apart from Illustrator? Pandemonium. That I got that one much later, but yeah. So when this one came out in 2005, by Rizzoli, I already was familiar with Rizzoli because I had seen their books on artists like Piranesi and other artists like that, which I'm a big fan of. Yeah. And so this was the one that you could actually see a lot of the color paintings, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a big deal. I mean, it was a huge step forward for presenting Clive's artwork compared to the Illustrator books. Of course, we had by the time this came out, we already had Abarat 1 and 2, which they teased us a little bit about with his paintings. But this is like, hey, if you like those, you can get a whole book of them. And I bought mine. It was, to me, I thought it was pretty mainstream. I bought it at a Borders for like $60. I went to a book signing for it. And actually I can show off since I've got it in my hands here.
Oh, did you make a sketch on that book?
Yeah.
Yeah, look at you. Great.
Oh, it's a giant monster head.
Yeah.
To Ryan, very best wishes, Clive Barker. That's awesome.
Yeah. And big. That's what's good. The book is big. So if you actually draw something in it and fills a page, it's big.
Yeah.
It's hefty. Yeah. It's hefty. It's this book contains wonders.
That's it's actually one of my I really love that book, even though it had all the problems with the gold gilding at the beginning, which led to its scarcity now to find some clean copies.
It was really interesting for me to hear about that problem because like mine, I don't, I never had that problem. I never even heard about it until
I totally did.
Until we started talking about Imaginer and in Imaginer, all the problems with this book came up and like, oh, really?
Mine had clumps.
You almost have to use a knife to cut through the pages on some of them. I mean, they were bad. Too much.
Jay and I were just talking about that before we recorded that he actually had to use a knife to.
Right. So I don't know if it's obvious, but luckily I was as careful as I could. But mine did have clumps of glued together pages because usually they do this kind of gilding for things like Bibles, right? And books that have very thin, very uncoated paper. So in this case, they tried the gilding on pages that had this glossy stock paper. And apparently what happened, and I have something here from the actual editor that is quoted on Revelations. So it says here that Chris Steiner from Rizzoli USA, he said, readers may find that some pages of Visions of Heaven and Hell stick together at the edges. This sticking is caused by the gold collar foil that has been applied to the edges of the pages as a decorative element. This is the same gilding technique that's historically been used for Bibles. However, because the pages of this book are of a high-quality coated art paper stock, they reacted differently to the gilding process than the thinner, uncoated paper stock of Bibles. When the gold foil of the gilding was applied, the heat and moisture caused the coating of the paper stock to melt slightly, leading to the sticking. And he says, when opening the book, it's best to fan through all the pages quickly back and forth, preferable than going through the book, pulling apart page by page individually. We regret any inconvenience this may cause the reader, and we hope that you will enjoy the unique production values of the book. So this came out on January 4, 2006. Wow. I can tell you, I tried doing the, fan the pages, but it didn't work. I was
going to ask you if you tried that.
Yeah.
No. So I had a very long knife, very sharp, very long knife with a flat end. And I would just slightly try to pry it into between pages that were glued together. And I gently kind of inched my way up and separated every clump. But holy crap, that was quite a task.
You shouldn't have, we shouldn't have to do that. But I tell you, luckily mine only had 5 or 6 pages that I had to deal with like that. It wasn't the whole book. So we don't want to leave the impression that there was a big clump of funk that you bought. It was just like a handful of the pages that actually stuck. And you're right, Jose, there was no flipping pages to unstick those pages. No.
Yeah.
You did something a little more aggressive.
There was actually on episode 63, we had Thomas Nagovan of the
Century Guild.
Century Guild, thank you. And he told us something which I'm not sure if it was completely accurate, but what he said to us was that not a lot of books made it out to stores, because when Rizzoli found out what happened, that a lot of the books that came out in extreme, conditions with the gilding, they remaindered the books. So it looks like a lot of that run ended up trashed and pulped. So just a few, I'm assuming, that were in a better condition made it to stores and places. I bought mine off of eBay, so I didn't get it from a store.
I don't know about that either, because I know, so 2 years later I was at a signing for Mr. Begone. I flew to Seattle for this. And after the signing, he had a question and answer thing. And one of the people said, "Clive, is there anywhere where you can get a book of your artwork?" And I, in the audience, I went, like this and held my book up. And he goes, "Yeah, Ryan over there, he's got it. That's the one, Visions of Heaven and Hell." So at that point, it was still available in stores. And that was 2 years later, right? 2007.
Wow.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. So quite a few made it out, I guess.
I think so. And were they shrink wrapped or not?
Yeah, I can't remember. I think they were shrink wrapped.
So you see, that's what I was thinking. I would always find one copy that was open, so they would not know how bad a book was at that level to even send it back. So I really don't understand. I was wondering about that myself. It's a great book, and like I said, it is one of my favorite, and it's a user-friendly book. It's very user-friendly. So and the images aren't that bad.
And when you look at the cover, it opens up with this amazing character just looking back at you, like straight at you.
Yeah.
And he's clearly a non-human creature, like a lot of people that the characters that Clive Barker creates. And there's another one that's kind of bluish down there, kind of smiling, kind of having like a sexy, sensual kind of smile. And he's kind of raising his eyebrow, looking at us like, okay, turn the page and see what we got to offer.
That's a detail out of an Aberrat, of course. That's the detail off a if I remember, it was a large 3 canvas thing. I think it was like a 9. It was, is it? I thought it was that big one that he was painting in as that extra in that one film that he did. That's from a huge piece, if I remember correctly.
It is from, I think, a triptych. So
you see. So what you're getting again with this book here, and Barker, even in the introduction, which is fantastic, infers that a lot of this book is Aberrat or Aberrat related. I mean, it's from that era, and then he throws in some other stuff. Great book. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a probably 70% Aberrat and, stuff from a children's series or a young adult series. And then all of a sudden, like, there'll be more adult themed kind of stuff.
Yeah. Because Joanna Kotler was the one who was working with Clive when she was at HarperCollins, and she was the editor for the first 3 books of the Aberrats, and also this one. So the foreword is written by Joanna Kotler, and she tells the story of how she got to visit Clive's house, and Clive got to give her a guided tour of the Aberrat paintings and the studio. So I'm sure this was an experience that at least all 3 of us have had the pleasure of seeing the paintings in the studio, although I did not have Clive talk to me about the paintings, but I'm sure that that you got that opportunity, Don.
I did. I was really real happy. I had actually been called because of my affiliation with Bess Cutler, and I was supporting him at the time. I seriously was trying to support him by buying a piece of art at every exhibit. I mean, that was what I really wanted to do. And I had bought a couple of pieces from the Illusion Suite after the fact, and sent him a little note in the mails and with a little copy of a pocket-sized Blake verse, just for inspiration for him to look at. And I knew he would never look at it, but I thought it would touch a nerve anyway, because I knew he loved William Blake.
That's a wonderful touch.
Yeah. Well, I did that along with this and that. But anyway, about, I don't know how, maybe a year later, I was at work and he called me, and at work, I mean, go figure, wouldn't you freak out? I mean, I never had any contact with him except at shows, and invited me to come to the studio if I ever had time, and told me some things about the what had been stolen from portfolios and at the Best Cutler shows and things like this, which was opening up quite a bit. But it's the reality of an artist in today's world. He is just a person. He was out there like everybody else, struggling, and a very talented and important person, but he was still struggling along. And these kind of things pop up all the time with galleries and the public, that kind of a thing. And so when I did get to go, like I had mentioned, the beautiful moment is that the big map of the apparat.
Yeah, exactly.
It was like a third done, and like that big head was penciled in on it, none of that. And he walked me over there and he just told me, this is what I'm planning. And I knew it was supposed to be called the Book of Hours, is what I thought it was going to be at the time. I was just in shock that I was seeing this stuff, and the rest of it was blank, and there were some little clouds and some sea and some boats painted in and all. And one thing led to another, and we did talk about some other things, but then the phone rang, which I'm sure is a stage thing, because he doesn't have time to goof around except maybe on his own time with friends. But then he had to go back to his office for some kind of meeting, and I was just thrilled that I had the time that I had. But it was really eye-opening. Caspar Wolfswinkel was sitting right there. He was one of the first things, if not the first thing done. He's in the book, and which I loved. I mentioned that in the first podcast. When I saw that piece and on that Sci-Fi Channel in the little biography that they did on him, I sent a note saying to put a sticky note on that painting, because I loved it and I wanted it. It has a blue, and I would end up getting that. Well, I didn't end up getting it. Nobody's got it, but he, there you go. You can see the head on the left on Ryan's side. That was just kind of drawn in, and I'd say maybe a third of that. As a matter of fact, I don't think it had 3 canvases up. I think there was just like a couple to give a little bit of context for him. And it wasn't in that room either. It was down in a different area.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this was in the studio house in the downstairs when I was there. Same place that Jose and I saw later on, that Jose and I saw them scanning stuff for the Imaginer books.
Isn't that wonderful?
James K., right?
Well, they're part of history. There you go.
Yeah.
I love it.
And Caspar Wolfswinkel was, I think, the first Apparat painting that he
opened up
made. Yeah,
it opened up his mind, and I swear, look at the colors in that particular image. They are used in a lot of images. I recognize them as colors right out of the tube and smeared onto that canvas and scratched onto that canvas and rubbed.
Caspar Wolfswinkel, I've got a poster of it. I don't have.
Yeah, there he is.
Like a painting,
do you?
But...
Wow. Huh? You have a poster of Caspar Wolfswinkel, Ryan?
Yeah.
When did that come out?
That was used to promote the Pacific Art Show when the Apparat images were, and I thought it was going to be extremely rare. I was so excited that I had gotten one, and then they showed up everywhere. Like you could get them about, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, something like that. It's a fantastic image.
The first time I went to see Clive's studio, Mark Miller gave me one of those posters to bring to the signing.
Wonderful.
When I look at this painting, all I could think about was Celebrate Imagination right there. Like the
hang on just a minute. That's what gave me gave me all the idea to do it.
Because
I didn't give Clive any credit, though. Here it is on the wall.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, yes.
Oh my goodness.
Hang on a minute. Look at this. This is going to be hard to do, but in this bottom.
I see the signature in the trees.
Oh
yeah. These pieces
that's really subtle.
You can't even tell what it is. It just looks like weeds. But these images, when they were, and this is how they were sent. This is the frames that they put them in at the gallery.
That's cool.
From Lelou's, none of them were signed. And, he talks about in here about not wanting to sign. Later on, he just put it on the back, signed his name on the back. And if he could remember the year, he would put the year on it. But yeah, this was actually, you can, if you know Clive's history back then, this looks pretty good on here like this, that you can see David Armstrong in this. I swear to you, if that is not his partner at the time. I didn't think about it at the time, but David Armstrong was there. But you can see his features, the wide nose, the dark skin worked in at the top. That isn't by accident. That's got to be that. And this was, Clive told me that this had to do with using the moon, which is typically a feminine reference. You know, Luna is the name of this, in a more masculine way. That was his whole point about this. And this particular image, again, you are so right, Jose, to bring that up. When I saw this, I said, that's simple. Of course, I can't get the character Clive can get, but I said, that is a simple image. Give me a compass. And it gave me some of my first inspiration to do it.
And people have seen faces on the moon since forever, right? I mean, the man on the moon has always been there.
Oh yeah.
So it's a very recurring theme to see a face on the moon, and to have the moon be kind of like this feminine presence, whereas the sun is Helios and it's like a more manly, more, you know, powerful presence. But I like how Clive made those splotches of red and orange and stuff going around the moon. It's kind of giving it,
that gives it its aura, that adds that energy. And you know, he knows his color. So you know, and if you look into any color theory at all, he had mentioned that once about a painting he saw of mine, how I don't think he cared a damn thing about what I was painting, but he said he sure knows how to use his colors. And I'll take whatever compliment I can get.
But I really like the fact that your artwork seems to have a lot of greens and blues, which are deeply like, you know, calming colors. I think
they are calming colors.
Yeah. So that does shout out at me, like, not shout out, but it does instill me when I look at your paintings as well, with a sense of calm and like temperament. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like they're not aggressively colored, but their colors are very pleasant, because I like I said, I'm a big fan of blues and greens, and they show up a lot in your work too. So I like that.
So thank you.
This really quick was that Mr. Begone talk that we were talking about, where I held up the visions of heaven and hell.
Oh yeah,
where was that, Ryan?
It was at the Pacific Science Center, or the Science Fiction Museum in Seattle in 2007.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Those pants, you know, there they are.
Yeah, and he had the gorilla backpack too, but you can't see that.
Oh yeah, the WWF.
WWF.
World Wildlife Fund.
Yeah.
The very first time I ever saw that was at the, you know, I had mentioned that we were invited to that, not that we were VIPs, but there was a VIP showing of those Aberrats, the Aberrat paintings at the Pacific whatever center in LA. And that's the first time I was introduced to the gorilla backpack, and I had to do a double take. I said, what?
Yeah. It went along
in that thing.
Yeah. It matched his plushy pants really well.
Yeah.
When you have those pants with all the patches and all the paint and little things there, it really matched that. But so Joanna Codler talks about that experience of going in to Clive's studio and seeing, you know, all the paintings, and have Clive kind of draw her into that world, which I think probably this was before they started making the Ambrat books. And I can understand how someone would fall in love with that world just by being able to see, because some of these pictures, sometimes they don't even have titles, but you look at them and immediately you try to start coming up with a title and a story for what you're looking at, which is, I think, what Clive excels in, is to make you be creative and join in the process of trying to understand, what am I looking at? What is this creature looking back at me? And also, I think he makes a lot of portraits, right? There's a whole chapter where he talks about how he makes usually like faces of people looking straight at the viewer. And I think that's a really good way of drawing you into the painting and drawing you into the character and the story of the character, and immediately starts running in your head, like, who is this person? What do they do? what are their powers? Where are they actually standing? It's like a plane full of like pyramids in the distance and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, you just want to know what's the story behind this. And sometimes it's like, that's up to you. That's up to you to make up the story for this painting.
That's one advantage I think that the Imaginer books have over this one, is that you can see the titles like across from the paintings.
Oh yeah, that's important. That's important.
Yeah. Whereas in this book, they have an index at the end, an index of, it says like an index of plates or something like that, and it's all the names of all the paintings like at the end, and it's too hard to go back and try to match them up. It's they make the reader do a lot of work trying to do that.
I know that some of the paintings have had more than one name over the decades. I mean, I know for a fact that I've looked at some paintings in this book that I was like, oh, this is painting so and so, and then I go to the index and I'm like, oh, that's a different name here. So that's interesting sometimes, how depending on the mood or whatever.
Let me show you. Now that you brought that up, I'll tie into your thing, Jose. I've got an example of that exact thing right now. And, there's another problem with somebody who's very prolific, is they mix up the names. I mean, you forget what you call them, and you call certain things the same thing you called others. But here's an example of a name that changes a lot. And it's another original that I haven't. See if this will pop up on there too.
Oh, the Bug Brothers.
Oh yeah.
Right, the Bug Boys.
You can see the signature down.
I see it.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Kind of see it down there. It's just another smear. He had asked us if we wanted him to sign these. They weren't signed, and we said yes, of course we wanted a signature, but I would easily have it on the back. You can't really tell what it is anyway. But this piece here, there you go.
Yeah.
He's in there too. This piece is called the Bug Boys. It's also called Billy and Bobby, the Bug Boys. And
I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, let me see if I can share this with you just a second. Let me try to share an image that I was going to show that piece. Just 1 second. Again, here, let me see if we can work this out.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
did a picture pop up yet?
Yeah. Yes, it did.
Yep.
Yeah.
That worked.
It's the little booklet from Being Music.
There you go. This is a great little item too. Look at the bottom. Billy and Bobby, the Bug Boys.
Oh,
yeah. The Bug Brothers. Clive Barker,
the
1994.
The Bug Brothers.
Yeah.
1998. So anyway, I just wanted to show that now. That's one of 2 or 3 deviations on that particular name there. And that's in the very front cover. So in my opinion, they are stars in their own right. But looking at this picture, since I don't have the originals sitting up here right now, I asked him what that red bar was that runs down the side. Okay. And he was very evasive, and I still don't know if he even knew what it was. But then I was looking at this piece, and most of these bugs appear to be on this side of what could be a glass. So you see the back of them, and then some of the bugs you see climbing up their bodies on the inside.
Yeah.
So there definitely was something else going on here, and he had told me that Disney didn't want this because it was too racy and skimpy. But I did see in that is that the Beyond the Aberrat book that Phil and Sarah did? That you remember that by chance?
Yeah, the companion book.
Yes, that they actually referred to this, saying it was a potential image for the Aberrat. Yeah, that is a rare book, Ryan.
Oh yeah.
That you don't see that hardly ever, and the number of signed copies are even rarer on that.
Beneath the Surface of Clive Barker's Aberrat.
Fantastic.
And it was mostly an ebook, but then they had like a limited number also of these physical copies.
Yeah,
I think it's only 100 of them.
Is it really?
I think so. What does yours say at the front? Is it numbered?
It was 100 or 125.
Yeah, it is limited to 100. Yeah, mine is number 35.
Of 100?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it says for Ryan, Phil and Sarah Stokes. Wow. So they signed it. They signed it too.
Oh, that's great.
Did he sign it?
Yeah, both of them did. They separate signatures. Yeah.
Clive did too?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Wonderful. Yeah. Love it.
It's a book plate. Is that a book plate?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I see it. Yep.
Now I wonder if I had him sign that separately, or no, it looks like they left a space for him to sign right there. So that was probably at the time of that they sold the book.
I think so too, because mine didn't. It just had his signature in it.
That's the book that has Peggy O'Leary teaching Everett to her class, I think, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That we had on the podcast. Introduction to the book by Clive Barker also brings up some stuff that I think is really, really interesting for Clive Barker fans, because he talks about how his grandmother, Flo Barker, would tell him stories about, Spring Heel Jack and whatever. And something that does come up every once in a while is that he based Candyman off the story that his grandmother told him about some guy who would go around with a razor blade and cut little boys' privates in public bathrooms if they weren't careful. So that's one of the things that he kept in his mind from his grandma, and eventually, developed into Candyman. And then another funny story that he puts in, and I could see Harvey Swick doing that, is that he said at night he wasn't afraid of monsters, and he had a little ritual where he would go up to the window and look outside at the dark streets of Liverpool, and he would start contorting his face on the window and try to make as scary a face as he could to tell the monsters outside, hey, you're bad, but I'm also bad, so don't mess with me. And eventually he got the idea for Cabal off of that thing of having like this human person who, is, knows that there's monsters out there, and he's a monster himself, and he seeks out the monstrous city of Midian to join them and not be afraid of monsters anymore, I guess.
I totally thought of The Thief of Always when I read that introduction too, but he didn't mention Thief of Always. He just talked about Cabal, but I had that same exact thought when I was reading that.
Because he said, after saying that he made faces on the window, says, ridiculous, I know, but I had faith in the creatures I conjured. I felt I was of their tribe. Later, I would use the idea in a short novel called Cabal, in which a man believes himself to be a serial killer and seeks out a community called the Nightbreed, who live in an abandoned cemetery. And his uncle, Lewis, he also worked for, making cemetery headstones and stuff like that. So I wonder how much that also kind of worked itself into the whole cemetery city of Midian. And because he says he saw marble angels in his Uncle Lewis's office shop and stuff. So every time you get a little piece of this background story of Clive's childhood or teen years, you get another little piece that helps you understand what he created a little bit better. Maybe not too much, but there's a little piece that falls right in place, and you're like, oh yeah, I understand this better now.
I agree with you. I do agree with you. I wanted to share a little bit from the beginning of this book. I'm just going to read a little bit out of this because, even now, my main activity besides painting a lot, and believe it or not, last year was a fantastic year for me. I ended up selling 76 paintings in 1 year. And that's like unheard of for me. And I don't know how I'll ever do that again, but that's going to be my goal now to do that.
Great.
My goal has been to sell 1,000 of them. And I was shocked if I could even sell 100 of them. And that happened a long time ago. But right now, my passion also is I'm a docent at the Museum of Fine Arts here in Houston, and I tour 3rd and 4th graders around the museum, and with the goal of just igniting some little spark in them to make them want to look at art. My goals are not too high. That's my whole thing there. It's a very simple thing. You don't have to know anything about art. You just have to be accepted by them, by the museum, to do it, that you can represent them. So that is my goal. So I read this and I thought it was very pertinent to that particular thing. And this is how he starts. And that's another good thing about the Visions of Heaven and Hell. It's got a great introduction. And Barker has a couple books that have really good introductions. This one is a real good one because it also shows you a couple of the important historical paintings he observed that actually motivated him to do what he was doing. But anyhow, it starts like this, and I'm just going to read a few sentences to kind of lead into it. It goes, "A child quickly learns where his or her particular power lies. For some of it, it's simply the way they look. For others, their ability to kick a ball. or solve a mathematical problem. For me, from my earliest memories, it was drawing that gave me power. I mean, that when I drew things, people looked, smiled, took pleasure, and asked me questions about what I was sketching, which allowed me in turn to invent stories about the things I was drawing, those leading to more stories and to more drawings. That pretty much sums up his career. You can just where his career was heading. You can see what he was exposed to at the time. You know, he was in the 50s and 60s. You know enough about our culture at the time to know what he was seeing and all. I see lots of semblance of his work in other people's work at the time. It just really aggravated me to no end to see what appeared to be a handful of aberrat creatures thrown into the Pirates movies with Johnny Depp and all. I kept seeing those kind of things, stuff on people's heads, coming out of heads, all of this stuff, and it just looked so much like aberrat stuff. And then the other day, I was watching the Criterion Station, and they have, you know, they're showing all the is it Jarmaine or Jarman films? You know,
oh, I don't know.
You're talking about Derek Jarman?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
They were showing his, and I watched one, I can't remember the name of it, but it had the exact same format or close to it as I think it was called Paradise Street. Barker's play. It had the Queen of England roaming the current day streets of London. And I said, now who thought of that? Was this something that inspired Clive? Because it was the exact, I mean, there she was in her Victorian garb, roaming the streets with her sidekicks.
Is that The Tempest?
No. This is the Shakespeare. No, I forget the name of it, but you'll know it right off the bat when you see it. It's in the first, and then it transfers to present day time. But there it was.
What year was that movie?
You know, I didn't look. I think it was the late 70s or around 80s. So that would have been Clive would have had to have been exposed to that.
Oh yeah, it's Jubilee, 1978.
Okay, so see, that was after right during the plays.
Yeah. I think so. This is I looked it up, and that was ringing some bell. I didn't see this movie, but I did find it was Jubilee 1978 Derek Jarman movie. And it's about Queen Elizabeth I transported forward in time to present day, and occultist John Dee also shows up, and they show up in Britain of the 70s. It is amazing. Like
it happens all the time.
Adamant is in that movie, apparently.
Adamant, yes. I watched most of it, speeding through some of it because most of it's over my head. And
Toya Wilcox, who's now married to that guitar player from King Crimson. I forgot his name. Rick
Arino?
Wakeman? I think Fripp. I think she's married to Fripp.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've got to watch that movie. That sounds good.
Check it out. Your jaw will drop. I mean, I recognized it right off the bat. I said, what is this? And then I didn't, it was late at night and I didn't think about going and looking up the dates, but one of the two definitely inspired the other, because that's a biggie. But he also, in this little thing at the beginning, he talks about he never drew from life. If you look at a lot of Barker's old stuff that was probably never meant to be seen except by his friends or all, there's at least 2 or 3 in there that you can tell, unless they were drawn from photographs, but I consider that the same. If somebody's drawing from a photograph, they're pretty much drawing from life. But I think there's even some in the illustrator books.
I mean, if you consider, for example, his work drawing Nicholas Vince as being drawn from life. But I've never seen any drawing of Clive, including any sort of architecture, for example, any street or any place in Liverpool. I never seen anything that would be, from real life. Everything that I've seen from him is always usually some amazing creation, and not a lot of stuff is very. Even the backgrounds are alien sometimes. I mean, I don't really see. If there's a city, it's going to be some sort of fantastic spire city, and or some pyramids in the distance. So that's very interesting.
No, I agree with you there, but you can tell that some of these things were done for friends and all, and they probably weren't even meant to be out. But he is definitely capable of doing whatever he wants to do, and that he's definitely capable of drawing from life, but he saw no need for it, I think.
He had so much
really
stuff just brimming, right? Yeah.
Yeah, really.
And I think we probably all owe a debt of gratitude to our teacher, Alan Plent, because that's the one he mentions here in the introduction as really helping him understand that sometimes, we've all heard about Clive Barker's tent of doomed paintings that he keeps outside and scrapes them off and paints something else over it. But he said that Plent was a teacher that taught him that sometimes if a painting gets away from you, there's still some things to learn, and you might still look at that painting in a different way and not necessarily condemn the painting. So that's interesting, because he does mention in some of these articles that open each chapter how sometimes he feels like a painting sometimes goes away from him, and when that happens, it's gone. That he would have people coming into the studio and say, "Hey, whatever happened to that painting I loved so much?" And he's like, "It's underneath that painting now." And it'd be like, "Oh no, I liked it so much." But it all comes down to the artist and whether he's happy with the painting or not.
Yeah. That's true. And you can throw away and throw all kinds of stuff away because you never really know. The artist really per se doesn't really know what will sell. They have a good idea, and you have to pay the rent. I mean, you have to pay the bills, and so you do have to make concessions there on what you paint. And I know that we like to think that Clive's completely immune of that, but I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure about that. Sometimes I don't know. I'm rambling. I'm going down a rabbit hole there. But
yeah, sometimes an artist can be his own worst critic, right? So it's about acceptance sometimes of the things that go away from you, and maybe sometimes you can find it back. I mean, I know there's at least one painting that Clive said used to be in a tent, and then he went back to it. And I think it's the one Prometheus. Blood falls on the ground and these sprouts come out, and one of them comes right through the body of the man who's like meditating on the floor. I think that one is an Imaginer. I'm not sure what volume, but I don't know if you guys remember the painting that I'm talking about.
I don't remember that.
It's a man with a hand raised up, and then he's got like a halo, and there's these bamboo shoots.
Talking about that? Are you talking about that? It's a real busy painting, and there are shoots, and he's nude.
And one of the shoots is going in underneath his body, and
yeah. Oh no, that's I can't imagine that being thrown out. That's like
I think I remember him mentioning that was in the tent, but then he got back to it because someone said something about how that work reminded them of the tale of Prometheus's blood hitting the ground and sprouting flowers. And that was enough to jumpstart him. And he got the canvas back and he went back to it. And I think now you can find that painting in Imaginer books or something. Wow. So
yeah, you can. I remember it now. That what a great story. I didn't know that. I hadn't heard about that.
I remember going through that tent and flipping through all those paintings and thinking like, it just like,
can I just roll this up and take it with me?
Yeah. Can I just agonizing over whether it was kind of rude to ask if you think these are garbage, can I just take one? But I couldn't do it. I just couldn't, I felt this sort of awe and that I'm there and I should be respectful. And, but I don't have any paintings.
I thought the same thing too when I got that paintbrush. But there's like 100 million paintbrushes, and there were so many of them clogged and dried with paint you could never even use them again. And they were and I asked him he wasn't there, but I asked his assistant if he wouldn't mind if I had one of these. And I mean, seriously, it had so much funk on it that you could never use unless you were going to draw. I don't know what you could even do with that. So I have that on top of my Hellcat in there as it's a like a souvenir from the studio at the time that I did have permission to get
so that. Clive Barker does not clean his brushes. Now you
know. I'm wondering. Sometimes I'm wondering. Hey, let me throw this off on another crazy. We'll get back to the book. Only because this has perplexed me a little bit, and this does get a little bit more on the explicit side. And Ryan, if you could open, or one of you could open the book to page 298 to the woman in the striped stockings. I'm going to hold this print up just to give a slight little story about it. And I only mention this because it's in the book. I shouldn't force you. I have a picture here to do it off the screen, but I'm having so much trouble putting them on the screen and sharing it.
Yeah. I got it. Okay.
So the reason I'm bringing this picture up, and I was going to do this at the beginning just to jolt this conversation into to get a joke. This image here, I want to show this to you. This is a very rare print. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Hans was doing the prints for most
Luna 7, right?
Back in the day.
Yeah.
Okay. He could not, and he put a lot of trouble into his prints. I mean, he did a lot of prints for Clive, and it involves a lot more than you think. It's not just taking a picture; it's a lot of correcting and stuff like that. Now, this picture here, which to my knowledge might even be the only Clive Barker image that refers to any type of heterosexual activity whatsoever. And tell me if I'm wrong, because I was trying to think through. I couldn't remember if any others.
Well, I think it's probably the most overt. Yeah. Oh, I mean, there may be some others, but
can you even think of one? I think
of more like sketches and stuff, you know.
Okay. Well, anyway.
Yeah, more.
Anyway, let me. I want to be sure everybody can get a good look at this. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing this up is I asked Hans about it. He said, "No, I'll remember that if I did it." And then I started looking close. He asked, "Is it on canvas?" I said, "Yeah, it's on canvas." And I was getting every print if I could. And then I noticed at the top. Let me see where it's at. Where it's right up here. There's a little rim of black where whoever did this image or took the picture didn't crop it perfect. They left a little bit. They left a tiny bit. Now Hans would never have done that. So it let me it let me know that this was not his, and this isn't something someone would typically order. I mean, and you know, you could call them and get stuff made for you custom if you wanted it. But the funny thing was when I was at the Fangoria convention and I was behind the tables and behind the scenes at the time, these prints were handed out to everyone in the like Clive Barker related group. And the reason it sticks into my memory so much is because Ashley Lawrence got one. And she came to me about it, and I didn't take these up there. And I did deliver some. Some. She came to me, but I was horribly embarrassed. I'm old school. This is extreme. And she was roaring with laughter. Now, I don't know if that was nervous laughter or whatever, but she is such a joy. Said she loved this. And I know that Doug Bradley got one. And if both of them got one, then I'm thinking anybody else that was probably there with anybody affiliated with Hellraiser probably got one too. And so I was throwing this out there in case somebody watched this podcast, could give me some insight onto what was the reason for this particular crazy, bizarre, unique image. And this is another 4-foot canvas. This isn't a tiny little thing you could hide somewhere. You know,
it's not like anything else that he's done.
No, only the colors are. The colors are.
Yeah.
The color and the style, and you know it's him, and he signed them all. And it didn't even run. The Sharpies didn't even run with the yellow that a lot of the earlier prints that tend to run the yellow out.
And the bald man, you know, is that you can tell from that guy's face.
What's funny is in the book, when you look
think
at
it's Harvey Weinstein.
The next page over, you have this, which is named, and I mean, we're a mature podcast, we can say that. Looking at this kind of makes me think of a more extreme version of George O'Keeffe's paintings, and this one's called Cunt Moths. So from around 98. So Clive does have this knack of sometimes surprising us a little bit. And
I've seen plenty of allusions to female genitals in his paintings, but I've never seen an actual activity of any sort.
So there is kind of hetero, we could call hetero shenanigans going on in some of the other paintings, but they're not necessarily human creatures. So in this case, it might be just a hole in the wall. So I don't know what's going on back there. But definitely, I mean, it's so vibrant. And what other thing can characters do that celebrates the vibrancy of life than to make love, right? So, I mean, that's one of the things that seriously comes, it's perfectly themed when it comes to Clive Barker characters. They're all very vibrant. They drink life by the mouthful. So that's what we see here.
Well, when I see that particular image of the lady in the striped stockings, I'm seeing an artist that's painting a painting for a particular specific reason.
It does seem that way.
It seems like either it would be a commission or it would be something to just shock a group of people. And looking at that, it wouldn't have taken him a long time to do it, I don't think. And it went to a group, he picked that painting himself.
Yeah.
Obviously to give to those associates.
And obviously, I mean, we have different points of view on looking at these things that, for example, I would say probably a heterosexual person would see this differently than, let's say, a gay person. There are probably levels of shock and levels of titillation, I would say, that are different depending on your own internal, identity when you look at the painting, because you always bring yourself to whatever art you're looking at. You always kind of bring yourself into it, at least to some measure. So I'm guessing there will be different ways of people to look at this painting depending on what kind of point of view they're looking at it. So, but definitely seems like out of character for Clive. And it does look like it might have been started by some sort of idea.
I really think it was for his friends. And also notice the composition of it. He's done this before, but this is like a square. It's like I mean, there's a lot of thought into this picture. I think, some of Clive's work is more spontaneous, I think, but this particular piece here has some thought into it. So to me, it will always remain a mystery, and how it ended up in the Rizzoli book. I'm thinking he picked it. And it's
in a book full of Abarat paintings.
That's exactly right.
But it's not just Abarat paintings, right? Because we have some images here that some of them come over from the 70s, the late 70s or early 80s. Like there's some major ones. I do have a list of paintings that really strike me. And for example, the page 27, you have the sketch with the demon with the wings clipped off, which is a really old sketch on page 27.
Let me find it.
Yeah, it's right at the beginning.
So that was around the Illusion Suites when he did that.
Right. So you see it right there.
Love it.
And for example, this one kind of reminds me of the despair and loss from the image that he made, the demon putting out his eyes as well, which Ryan, you had a t-shirt of that for the longest time.
Yeah,
right?
A bootleg t-shirt I got from a comic book convention in like 92.
And there's another demon somewhere around here that opens a box, and then his arm is on the floor, and he's got like his hand over his face. And again, it looks
because it was a
like a spider creature or whatever that.
What are those creatures called? The chicken,
the basilisk.
Basilisk.
The basilisk.
You can see he opened Pandora's box. I didn't see that. I didn't look it up in here yet, but that particular person or whatever opened that box probably from curiosity. That little creature was in that box and jumped out. He's running away from the image in that, if I remember correctly, in there. And it took me a while. I didn't even catch on to that the first time I saw it, but that is like a little narrative in itself. It's really a great example of what Clive can do with those sumi brushes and ink on these big 34 inch pieces of professional ink paper.
And they're so deliberate. And when you're painting with sumi ink, there's no room to hide mistakes. So you have to admire the fact that the line work, even though it's a little scratchy, like Clive always has this kind of scratchy outline, but at the same time, everything is there, like the beautiful anatomy of it, the cut up, the clipped wings on the back. The wings on the floor.
That's an old theme, it's wonderful with the little art history to clipping wings, especially off an angel of sorts. Of course, this could refer to the fall or whatever, but the most common one you see are referring to Cupid because he's so mischievous and all. They either take his bow away from him or they just clip his wings and get it over with. It's like, he everybody thinks he just shot arrows into everybody that to make them fall in love, but in reality he tormented people, all that he tormented animals. And there's a great sculpture at the museum here that I just love it. He's on the back of a gazelle, and always the kids, I always take them over there, even though nothing wears diapers in there, and this is a pretty explicit little Cupid on there, but they always think he's just an angel, but he's actually a Greek god that's just tormenting another animal. It's a great piece too. But that's when you see those clipped wings, that's what it reminds me of.
And to me, that despair that these demons have, that putting out their eyes or grabbing their head and crying and turning away from us to hide their shame, also seems like this despair kind of almost stems from their own absence of God. They're cut away from God. Like the clipping of the wings is almost like cutting them away from ascending up. And so that is the source of their despair to me.
Well, he's definitely in despair, and it's like when I see this, I'm going, I didn't think they would do it. Yeah. But they did it. Oh, why did I push it that little bit further step? And I want to tell you something about these images. You talked about not making mistakes on these. There are blotches and stuff on these. When they photograph these, if you ever see the originals, hardly any of them do not have white out smearing over areas on these pieces. So you don't see that on the reproductions, but if you actually had the original, you would be able to see it. It looks just like whiteout, just rubbed over areas, that they want to hide. Happens a lot on the Illusion Suite.
Another one of my favorite paintings is Lazarus. What was the name of this one? Sorry. It's Lazarus and Baby Pink Eye. So these two creatures, which they're also, if I remember correctly, this is
what page is that on?
This one is on page 31.
Okay.
Yeah. And this one, I believe this was
Stitchling.
It used to be a condemned canvas that all the stuff that he covered up with that ochre, dark green and blue, that was painted over. And I remember him saying that there used to be something else behind it, but then that didn't work. So he just covered that. So that's one of the, this reminds me of the book when Abarat 2 came out. This is one of the opening chapters of Abarat when the crisscross man goes to see Christopher Carrion to talk to him. And I remember on the little website, thebooksoftheabarat.com, that I don't think exists anymore, there used to be an audio excerpt where you could hear Clive with his raspy voice read the opening of this scene where Crisscross Man goes in there, and Lazarus and Baby Pink Eye start making fun of him, saying, "Oh, you're going to meet up with Christopher Carrion. He's gonna take good care of you. You're gonna have a bad time in there." And they're trying to scare him. And and I just love the fact that Clive's voice, still very raspy, is reading that. This is Gorgosium, Crisscross Man. And it's like, wow. And I always wonder whatever happened to that reading, because that website went down. That never came out with Clive Barker reading Abarat. And I think, to my knowledge, that was probably the only excerpt that we ever heard of Clive Barker reading Abarat. So that's an interesting story.
I don't know, but one interesting thing about that picture is I love it's kind of minimalistic, but the bugs are on there from the Bug Boys. I didn't realize that till you brought that. You showed me that picture, and I took another look at it. I said, they're crawling. It's like the same format of bugs. It's probably the same herd. It made it.
Well, you have that character from Abarat, Lehman Vol, who has like 3 mouths and a fake nose. You
just turn one page back and he's there.
Oh yeah, Lehman Vol.
Yeah.
This guy also has burrowing insects in and out of his skin. It's on page 29.
I love that. I love those.
They burrowed his nose off.
So no, the spider bit his nose or something off, remember, and he had to wear this prosthesis.
Yeah.
there's other things here like, and if you guys have any particular paintings that you want to bring up, go ahead. But this one, personal favorite of mine.
Oh wow, carving that skull face into his
on page
That's
87.
That's a Lelou's painting. I remember it.
Yeah, this is page 87, and this one is called. Let's see. I'm going to go into a risque situation here. The Craftsman, 1998.
Good
so
name.
The Craftsman. We have a particular kind of risque, I would say, ceramic style in Portugal, from a particular city, and it is called. Let me see if I can share my screen and show that to you guys. We have a very traditional ceramic style where people make giant penises out of ceramic, and they're sold as traditional ceramic in Portugal. We call them caralho, and it's from a city called Caldas, Caldas. And I'll show you some of the typical things. And you can see craftsmen working on these giant ceramic penises, painting them, painting the shaft. So it's really funny. And they also make these kind of mugs, kind of like this mug. But when you finish drinking, there's a little dick right inside the mug at the bottom.
Oh, great.
Just staring back at you. And so that is such a funny thing that we have in Portugal.
Are these for the tourists or for the Portuguese?
They're usually for the tourists. The tourists really like seeing that stuff. But this might be a little risque, but I'm going to show you what it looks like. This one is used to put schnapps in. It's used to be a bottle. So the top screws off and you put the liquid inside and you screw it back in. And then they can become really creative with them. They can turn them into something like this. Like here's a thief escaped from the prison with a mask.
Looks like Dr. Seuss.
Yeah. And,
Dr. Seuss, Pennywise.
Why do so many of those look like they're bloody on the top?
And so that's just the color. They're just making the color pop a little more.
Yeah, I guess so.
But I was trying to show you, okay, that's not the right thing. But here's a craftsman working on one of those, if you can see it. So yeah. I'm always reminded of the craftsman working on it, making the skull face when I look at this one. So,
all right. Yeah.
I know.
That was one of the shocking Lelou's images, and there was a handful that referred to that type of thing there. It was a real eye-opening.
So definitely more penises than probably Ryan would care to look at in a Saturday morning, but there you go.
When we post these things on YouTube, it always asks, is this for children? And so now I can click no. No, it is not.
Or you can blur the whole thing. I don't know. It's up to you. But I think this one is just tremendously funny, witty, and just conveys a mood, right?
How much would you have paid for it? Had you been willing to hang that in your house? Let's say maybe in the dining room.
Well, it's 12 by 12.
Yeah. How much would you? How much do you think you would have paid for that?
I would probably say this. If this shows up, would probably be like $7,500.
Oh, you know how much it was?
How much?
$750.
Really?
Oh, you were off by a factor of 10.
You were off. Hey, hey, I love to hear this because that was like rock bottom. Those were prices that Clive was putting in the Lelouch show just to give people the privilege of owning a piece of original art of his. You know? So yeah, you would have been happy during that show. That was a fun show.
Of course. At least for me back then, I still couldn't. It's like I couldn't afford them then, and I don't think I can now now that they're 10 times that value.
But you're talking about prices that are like 20 years old, right? 20-something years old.
Yeah, but that doesn't make any difference. That doesn't make any difference. And I tell you, when you start dealing with this goes back to Jean Cocteau, which if people look into his art, it's so related to Clive Barker's. You just do not even know his line drawings in the early days. I see such an influence of him on Clive's work and his avant-garde plays and all this stuff. It's amazing. They are so close, and that's something that people need to look into. I was going to put some examples up here about that, but obviously I'm having issues with getting pictures on here to show how close Clive's early work really was to the Jean Cocteau's and their careers. It's just amazing. And you know, one of his favorite movies was Bella Bette. Is that what it's called? Beauty and the Beast?
Yep.
So back in the day, I know that was Clive, one of his favorite films of all time. So he had to have been well versed with Cocteau's art and stuff during the 40s and all. I was going to bring up something else that's not so much image related, but it's process related, and it's in this book. So let me share this with you. And I have an example of it here. But in the introduction, like I said, this introduction is so revealing. Yeah. He says something, and bear with me just a minute because I didn't mark this. Oh yeah, here it is. He goes, "This book contains a little of both, though we might differ here and there as to which is which. Most of the oil paintings were made in the last 8 to 10 years." Okay, he was referring probably to the Abarat stuff. Okay, the black and white work sometimes goes back even further. There's a monoprint here made back in 1977. Okay, that monoprint, by the way, okay.
It's in the circus part. Yes, this is definitely old stuff.
Okay, that, and I'd like to point something out to you here. Yeah. That is what he was referring to as an early 1977 monoprint. Right. And a monoprint is, of course, one of a kind, and the paintings are one of a kind. But a monoprint is something where you actually engrave into something. There's you can engrave into anything. Linoleum, you can engrave, of course, we know the copper plate engravings, we know the steel plate engravings, but I have one of the other monoprints here that isn't in the book, and I think it's better than that one, and I'd like to show you. And I'd like to also, like I was telling you guys before the show, when you engrave, you have to have the talent to see it advance, and everything's going to be flipped because it's going to go backwards through whatever you press it against that's inked. It gives you the image. You'll notice that if I remember in that one in the book, it's even this way. But here's the one that I have, and they are quite huge. But I wanted to share this, and you've seen the image before, I know. It's called The Prisoner in the Chair.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
I had not seen that one before.
Look at the bottom here. It says prisoner in, or prisoner on chair.
On chair, yeah.
There's the date.
And there's the date, 77.
March, looks like 17th, 1977. And there his little scribble into this. Now, the interesting thing about this particular image is, first of all, I think it's more, I like it better than this one. I think this evokes a lot more emotion than that one does. But a lot of these old times, and depending on what you engrave on, they can have remnants of what they were used for beforehand. Okay. Now, I don't know if that's the case on this, but I've seen there's a very legitimate art form that's lino cuts that are actually engraved into linoleum, and then they use that as the press to use on. This image here, and I know this is probably really me reaching, it's got whorls. I don't know if you can see it, but there's like scrapes that are coming this way.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you apply, let's see if he was to use a piece of used linoleum for this or something, the only reason that would be on there would be to adhere it to a floor or something. And this is probably so far-fetched it's crazy, but I think what he's done is he's used something they had laying around, a piece of trash or something, engrave this in. That's why you see all this other funk going on here, because it's not a clean sheet.
Right.
But when you use a trowel or something to create an area of adherence, you would tend to create this type of a thing. And I was just realizing that the other day, that this has this swirl going on, unless he did that to create something on his own, which I really don't think he did, because I think these are one of the types he did for himself, just to play with the process. Yeah. And again, all of this is backwards. So this image should be flipped the other way around.
Right. I think that was part of the texture of whatever he engraved that on. And
I think so too.
Yeah, with the pressing, it just kind of got some of the surface of that. And this one on the book is also backwards, because if you look at the date at the end, it is backwards. But you can tell reading backwards that this was made on the 17th of March of 77.
Okay, what was this one? This was the 17th also. So you see, and it's my impression that there's, and I don't know if this is to be the point, but it's my impression that there's maybe 3 different ones of these. Now, of these 2, this is the one that I like the best. Okay, so if I had my choice between them, and so I really consider this to be a really important part of Clive Barker art history here. You know, and this was back in the day when he was probably doing all the stuff for the erotic magazines and stuff, right around the time of the plays and all that kind of a thing. But
how many mono prints do you think are out there? There can't be that many, right?
Well, there's only one of this. And there's only one of that, because that's the definition of a mono.
I mean, as far as like individual ones that he did in that style versus just sketching and sumi ink. And
I know it's crazy, but I really think there's I don't know why I'm thinking it, but I think there's 3.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to take a while to do that. Now, you know, even though it looks relatively simple and all, this is somebody exploring a new medium, is what I'm seeing. And his whole art development is coming through in these. But when I saw that smeared part of like some kind of leftover adhesive from previous use, just like an outside artist today may paint on a door or paint on cardboard. I mean, not bought cardboard, but used stuff. And I don't know why they do that. That rots so quick. But still, whatever they have, they use. And I really don't think that Clive went out of his way to go buy a clean surface to do this work on that he was really playing. So I really thought that was important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That I feel like we're doing some CSI on this stuff, because we're coming up with the idea that these 2 things were made on the same day. And what are the odds of finding that out? There's some really more favorite ones that I have, like this one, the city that's standing on stilts with a little chair. This one is page 197.
Okay.
And he put this little chair at the bottom to give us a sense of scale. So it's really a tiny city. But when I saw this, it kind of hit something in my mind. And I discovered, because I recently was looking at some fantastic architecture artists, and I found out that there was this one. If you can see this one, it's a city on top of stilts as well. This is like an illustration.
That's not Piranesi, is it?
No, this one is actually a Russian architectural theorist called Arthur Shizkali Weiss. This was Magic City from 2002. So this is this reminds me almost immediately of that one, because it's funny how we tend to associate images and associate themes thematically inside our brains. So this one was like, hey, this one just looks like that. But I like how he makes cities in this book. They're always a lot of stuff on top of each other, a lot of spires. And sometimes the city itself looks almost organic, right? There's a creature that Joanna Kotler talks about when she went to his studio. She saw a creature that was defecating a city. And you can see
buffalo or something.
A big buffalo, right?
In this one,
and
he's in the book somewhere.
And it's like little plopping masses of buildings with windows falling down. And you're like, oh.
I wanted to bring up this one just because this is a pretty famous one. It's been on book covers. It's been on the cover of Rue Morgue magazine, I believe.
I remember that.
I really like this one. It looks like he's got his hair is made out of like weeds or flowers. Kind of a cool demon sort of a painting.
Yeah, why don't you tell us the page, and so we can
page 38. I believe.
Then I can get a closer look at it.
It's hard because the page numbers disappeared for a long time up to that one, but I think it's 38.
These pages are not all numbered, you know.
Yeah.
That's another non-user friendly thing. If the image goes to the edge of the page, the number goes with it.
Yeah, and if there's a whole bunch of those in a row, then it's kind of hard to find these pages sometimes.
Amen. That's true. No, that is very good. It has so many things going on in it that you can see in other work.
Yeah.
And you can also look, at any of Clive's work, and any artist, if you get used to looking at the stuff, is look around the edges of the creatures or the heads or the faces and all, and you'll see changes and smears and all. I guarantee you there's contours underneath those smears that were maybe the original idea of the artist. And when all was said and done, they didn't work just right into the context of the painting itself. And the artist preferred it to be either thinner, skinnier, larger, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Here's another image that I remember seeing first as a sketch published by Luna 7.
I had that whole series. Yeah. I used to have those.
The Diver.
Up.
Yeah. I have the Freudians, the original to the Freudians. And see, those original sketches, those were more than just off the cuff sketches. Those were actually produced pieces of artwork, and each one of them is big. They're like, those drawings are like 30 inches. They're large, very, very impressive. I love I bought the Freudians, and back then too, at that particular loose show where the craftsman was doing his work.
Right, exactly. And there's this one, which is a self-portrait.
Love it.
I always love this one. This
Me
is
too.
Another of the oldest pieces in here. And I have this one. I Xerox copied this one from, I forgot where it was, but it wasn't from this book. It was way before that. This might have been on Shadows in Eden. And I took a photocopy of this and I glued that onto my notebooks in high school. So that was like the cover of my notebook in high school. So
wow.
I had this one for the longest time.
That's a good example of Clive portraying so much with so little.
Yeah.
It is and he was really, really good at that.
It totally takes you into a mental state, state of contemplation, the mental state of introspection. And you can project pretty much anything that we all feel at one point or another into this character.
Yeah. I think it's a good example of adolescence. I've tried to portray that in some. It's like this unsure, kind of intimidated. Do I move forward, or can I just stay where I'm at in my comfort zone? And unfortunately, nobody can. A lot of that image that was to the immediate left of that was another one of the one flesh large paintings on paper.
Yeah, there's this one that's very meaningful in this book. This one is a painting that Clive made after hearing about his father Len passing away. So it conveys a lot of sadness. It conveys a lot of the hurt and the pain that you feel when you lose someone that you love. And I think there was something he was supposed to be sitting on. That rock was supposed to be something else, I think. And then he turned it into an egg of sorts. Wow. And on this one.
Oh yeah.
There's you can imagine with Clive's history, and we can all imagine how his family life might have been. I'm sure there was quite a bit of turmoil, and there was I really think that even though Clive did admit, it seems like in an interview that I read, and again, please don't quote me on anything because I'm quoting myself, but I sometimes I don't remember the exact words, but I really think that he said he had in one of the editorials that he had the opportunity to say goodbye to his dad. And he mentioned something about being in the room at the same time and a seagull or something flying past the window. It was such a poetic way that he wrote this, and it was either in the intro to a book or something, but I loved that whole aspect of it, and that he was there. And I think that was around 2000 or something around then.
Yeah, it was Cold Hard Canyon was around that time of his dad passing, I think.
Was it?
Yeah.
I know they were asking for, you could don't, I was going to send flowers, but you could, if you want, they were asking if you would mind just donating. And I think it was to a church in Liverpool. I mean, I'm not a church, a hospital. a hospital in Liverpool, and I think it was if I'm not mistaken, he had passed away from a blood cancer or something like that. It was really sad. But I didn't realize that painting meant that until I'd seen it referred to that a couple of times.
So, although this book was one of the first deluxe books that we had, there are some things that are not the best. Like sometimes some selections were a little hard for me to understand why they would put such a small image, blowing it up and not even take the whole image. And then there's a lot of black pages throughout the book as well.
And then also like important details getting crammed into the gutter, like this Terry cat's face right here is in the gutter and it's hard to but and I know they solved that pretty well in the Imaginer series, but here it's kind of rough and it happens a lot.
But you have to compromise with the size when you do that. If you're going to shrink it down, it just is. I mean, that was huge. That piece there.
Like this
I still don't know where that's coming from.
I know. This is so amazing. It's like, look at all the vibrant colors, and look, it's like coming out of it's like the dreams are escaping the skull for some reason.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It's so vibrant, and it was the first time. This book was the first time that I've ever seen. Here's another amazing favorite of mine is Saint Sinner. It's right there with
sure is
with the two creatures, two entities fighting inside his head and his 1,000-yard stare.
Wow.
All this stuff that goes on in a head comes out of a head. Those things were, I know they're not new to the world, but they were new to me when I saw Barker's art in that way. They were just new to me, and it meant a lot.
And
there's that
Mariposa Street, right?
Mariposa Street, correct.
Yeah.
And even the
look at the colors.
So beautiful, right?
I love that one.
Are amazing.
So beautiful.
And such little details. Look on top of the heads. In each little square, there's a little vignette of some kind going on in there. It's not just a photo or something. It's either a completely invented creature or somebody doing some off-the-wall thing or that kind of. It's different.
This one has a little humanoid parrot creature on top of his head, and so amazing. Like.
I wanted to share another. I'm just pulling stuff up that's unusual. That a lot of the stuff, Clive's master of color. His what he tends to do is he creates an impressive, and to me, he creates an impressive. I'm not saying to impress somebody, but it's
almost
like
impressionistic.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. But it's of the cartoon style. Okay, when you do a cartoon style, is you outline everything in black and you kind of color it in. So you'll see that a lot on Clive stuff, but it's not a fine, sharp line. But back in the two examples I'd like to show you. Back in the old days, in the 70s or whatever, when he was, I guess, developing and he's changed so much. I mean, there's all these obvious errors, the pen and ink, the sumi brush, the kind of like the covers of the Books of Blood. That's kind of a cartoonish illustrative look. Then you move into the more introspective minimalistic stuff that just express so much, and then you end up in the aberrat, which are not really illustrations. They're more what's the word I'm looking for? They're more a embellishment. They're embellishments of the work, and he even kind of says that himself. But in the early days, he did a dog image that I was lucky enough to get a handful of years back that I want to share with you, because it shows how he has this it's related to calligraphy. It's a sureness in his stroke of ink that not everybody has, and you can tell when you see them work it. I want to show this because the only time it's ever been seen is really in small images, but this is the actual size of it, and it's probably from the 70s too.
All right.
It was called Untitled, and it had no date, but it has to be the 70s. Look at this.
Oh yeah.
Can you see this? And you see it's got some boxing on it, but it's an obvious attempt, and there's such surety in every line. It's not like he's stopping and starting. He takes the legs and just swishes them out and swishes them back. The tail goes its own way, and then he signs it. So obviously was proud enough to let people know that it was his. But that's a step beyond just drawing, in my opinion. That's another type of style. Now, the other thing I wanted to show really was on page, and this is a little different, on page 265. This is the piece that, there's about 5 or 6 pieces I own in this book, but this is the piece that I contributed because they didn't have it for some reason. And I had bought this at an auction in the 90s. It was a charity auction that he had donated the piece to, and it's called The Christian. And if you can find that on page 265, and again, it's hard to find stuff in this book, but you'll see it there.
Where I got it, it's kind of in the lower right corner.
That's exactly right. It's a horrible image. The borders show. And of course, I sent that picture to them, but they could have fixed that. They could have fixed it. And just to show you, that is
just by fixing the contrast so that it's not yellow.
Exactly. This is an example of kind of the publishers doing a shoddy job of this, even when they did it. But I want to show you the original to that, so you can get a feel of how it can change from what you actually see on the page here. So you look at
mine up too, so we can compare.
Okay, you can do that. This is the actual original of that particular drawing. It's huge.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, I don't know, 25 inches or 8 inches the long way. This is an example, one of the few examples, well, like we were talking about that heterosexual activity in the other piece being a rare theme. This isn't a rare theme for Clive at all, but it's called The Christian, and obviously he's referring to that cross around his throat. But this piece here is one that's drawn with the brush and no underdrawing. Okay. Almost all the pieces that you see with the brush, you can tell the original plan under it. The Freudians, the Diver, all of those from Luna 7, those all have pencil under them. That dog is full of the pencil under it. You can tell that when they figured out where they wanted the actual line to end up, that's where he would try to cover it with his thing. And then if we could see the other pencil drawing, which is always cool, I think, to see, what was going on in the scribbling process, that he would do that. But just to show you, that's half the size of you. And when it showed up in here, not only was it horribly reproduced, it lost any little bit of grandeur it might have had, showing what he was doing.
Off on the side too.
Yes. Yeah, see, they couldn't, I don't know, it makes me think that maybe it was completely shifted or something.
Yeah.
I love that one on the right.
Jose, you're muted or something.
Sorry about that. So I was just pulling this one up because I was saying this one, some of them are, like I said, poorly reproduced, and like you said, Don, but this one, for example, looks pretty good.
Yes. You're talking about the one on the left?
Yeah. And then you have others that are just kind of yellowish, and maybe they don't have enough contrast in them, and maybe you can see the lines around it. So that's one of the things I thought could have been done a little better in terms of cropping or adjusting the images for the book.
Can I share my Jacobok really quick here? There we go.
Oh,
so yeah, this was from that same Mr. Begone one in Seattle.
Figure.
After he drew this, he was so happy with it, he made his assistant take a photo of it, since it was going away in my book, and he'd never see it again.
Hey, that's true, but didn't he do the same tongue in that other image you showed us?
Yeah, he did, and that was the same day. Yeah,
something about you is encouraging him to do this
especially because I'm sure you had several books in a row for him to sign, so I guess he just went with the same monster.
Yeah, yeah. But this one looks a little more demonic, and that other one was a little different. Big square head.
I think I found another image of someone with striped socks, and I'm not sure if this would be part of the same sequence because these stripes are a long way.
No. That was beside your Craftsman. That was on the wall, but so you could have that one for $7.52 if you'd like it.
Oh wow!
So maybe the other one was actually this character wearing a redhead wig. We never know. You never know.
That's true. You may not know. Hey, look, I want to share one other thing. Oh, I also wanted to mention when I showed the original of the moon. If you'll look up the moon in the Rizzoli book, it is so overexposed. That's another thing. The colors are just washed out compared to the original. So these are the complaints that, Nagovan and as people compared. But the deal was, at the time, it was the best we had. I mean, this book it served a purpose, and it actually went down in Barker history.
Well, and anyway, I was lucky my pages didn't stick together, so I had no complaints at all about this book. I loved it. I mean, until the Imaginer books came out.
I have one other question. I think this might have been one of the other images that sometimes has a different name. This one in the book index is referred to as Blue Vision for Bill.
What?
It's
just Blue Vision. I've never seen for Bill on there. I think somebody, what I bet they did was they were sending that image over via whatever format necessary.
You think
somebody put for Bill on the side.
Oh no.
Or maybe that was or maybe that was offered to Bill. I don't know. It says here, page 112, 113, Blue Vision for Bill, 1994.
It's a wonderful piece, and I've seen that hanging before too. And I think that Russell has that piece now. But it's a very, that's a striking image. And look at the sky. It's the Volkswinkel sky.
What is
Incarnations, I think one of the theater plays has that in the cover. Yeah.
There it's a huge painting.
Yeah. But I think it has another name. I've seen it's listed with another name. So that's one of the other things that sometimes, the paintings will change names. But what a great book. This definitely, it took me some time to get this book sent to me from Portugal. My brother sent it to me. Thanks, Raul, for sending this to me. He sent me also the first 3 volumes of Memory, Prophecy, and Fantasy. And I have one last sketch I would like to share of original art. That's you can find this little element from Abarat, this decorative element, in page 17. So on the top of page 17, you see that little element there?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to show you.
Oh, wow.
The preliminary sketch for it made by Clive.
I wonder what that could be dated to.
Yeah.
2000?
It doesn't say anything, but I'm sure this is around the time that he was doing other things for Abarat. So I would probably say 2000. Yeah, that sounds like a good estimate, considering other elements similar to this that show up in the book. They seem to trace back to 2000. But I thought this was great. This looks like an oil pencil or something. Some sort of crayon, maybe maybe a pastel pencil. I'm not sure. But you can see that there's a lot of like dirt and remnants of food or something that might have like gotten some grease on it, but or paints. That's probably paints. But
very interesting.
That's an interesting thing. I got this one also ages ago.
Wow.
Like many years ago, around the time that we were, still talking to people at Seraphin and Occupy Midian and stuff like that. But that's one of those elements that I'm like, hey, you can tell just how close it looks to the actual finished painting, with the eyes and the one eye being higher than the other, and the hands and the legs, and it's very, very detailed for like a sketch when you compare it to the final painting.
It's great it's so great when you obviously don't align the eyes, because that's a very hard thing to get perfect. Not only do you have to align them right, they have to be the bottom of the eyes and the top of the eyes have to be aligned too. It's a very tough thing to do.
And the very fractured nature of the body kind of becomes more fractured when you have things that are not matching, right?
Perfect. I think so too.
Yeah.
I just have one original sketch that's not in a book that Clive made for me.
Hey.
To the Boy in the Wings.
My favorite, little Joey.
Yeah. So I told him, hey, I'm going to have a son born really soon. And could you make a picture of an aberration child? And he said, I've never thought of an aberration child. I don't know what that would look like. But let me work on that. And so this is what he came up with. And it's
That's
To the Boy in the Wings. Yeah.
That is wonderful.
That was at Texas Frightmare Weekend in 2011.
Can you see this or not?
Yeah, it's your Books of Blood volumes 1 through 3.
Oh my God, look at that! It's one of the Bug Boys.
No, this one I want to show you. When I had spent a little bit of time with him during that Lelouch show, and I had sent, this isn't Books of Blood. This is my Weave World. This is just that first page that.
It says the other books. Yeah, the other books that he's written. Okay.
He knew that I had adopted the Bug Boys along with Luna and the Freudians. That was my big treat to myself that year. And so I asked him if he wouldn't mind putting something in my Weave World that had to do with the Bug Boys. And this is what he put in there. And I thought it was so good. It means, just look, the bugs are all the same. It looks to me, It looks just like something that, you'd have to ask him. And luckily, a lot of my books do have things, and I know he had to have gotten tired of this, and I don't blame him one bit, but I always wanted him to refer to something going on at the time, either that we had talked about, and that's what this ended up being. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that because it's really, really a sweet thing.
I really enjoy the use of negative space to make the wall, and then he just carves out a little window where you see the moon and you see the little bugs around the window just to frame it, to make you know that it's the background. And the way that he made bugs that are not just flat, but they're also on the side. You can see the little insect, legs crawling over it. It's just so nice.
Does he not know what he's doing?
Yeah, he does.
Is this off the screen now? Or am I back on the screen or not?
Yeah,
you were back on the screen.
Okay, let me share one other thing, because this kind of goes into art history that Clive's art history that I don't know a lot about, and I would love to know about. And by the way, some of my prized possessions that I have are from '77. So, but they're all they're really, really, really good. And someday we may have to do that. But let me show you this real quick and just expound on it a tiny bit. Did it show up?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Supposedly, now this is from '76. Okay.
Wow.
Supposedly, this is and I got this off eBay about 15 years ago, a long time ago, when I was watching for potential stolen product that I'd heard about, and I have no idea if this was or not. But this is supposedly a fragment of a large erotic piece that Clive had done for something, but it was way too explicit or whatever to be used in whatever way they were going to do it. And again, I'm just speculating about this, but this is the bottom portion cut from that picture now, and you can see, because it's got his signature and the date down there at the bottom. Now, what's going on in the top and the effort put into this, and you can see all the underdrawing and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, the texture work, yeah.
Yeah, it's really amazing. It's almost done like an engraving or something, so he obviously had his mind there. But I would love to see what the other pictures looked like.
Yeah.
The other pieces that actually went with this.
I know this is going to be a different book than we were talking about, but I got Illustrator 2. And I just found this dog image here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which kind of reminds me of the dog sketch that you showed earlier. Because
that one's done in pen and ink, and the other one was done on that old time brush, but they're both in your face. That one there, it infers it had something to do with the dog company when I saw that. it referred to the dog company because he does have something not quite as erect in one of the posters that I saw.
Yeah.
He did used to have this style of all that texture work, and I was just trying to find paintings like these paintings, which are also erotic.
And I'm not sure that one I showed you may not be a piece of something off of one of these.
And this one kind of depicts almost like a heterosexual kind of relationship going on there, but they all have all this crisscross texture work.
Yeah.
And what is the date on that one? Does it say? Can you see the date on that one, Jose?
Let me see what the date is. 1970.
Wow.
Yeah, I think this one is a Salome because there's a head on a plate here in the corner.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
sure
it
enough.
Says Salome and Herod with the head of John the Baptist. It says right there at the bottom. Yes, I'm surprised I can read Clive's scrawl. And this one is Samson and Delilah. This one was Samson and Delilah. It's kind of hard to, because the line work is very thin, so it's kind of hard to show it with enough detail.
I'm glad that they actually had the foresight to produce those and put those in that book.
Right.
Because you're not going to see them anywhere else.
Right. These two books, amazing.
They are amazing. They were thumbed through many times back in the day. I was trying to think if there was, now that I've kind of figured out how to share this, there was something else that this isn't in the book, but this is one of our prized possessions here. Just a second.
But now that Imaginer came out, it just kind of throws all these books in the water, but they're still very good books. They still bring a lot of stuff that we'd never got to see in Imaginer. Oh, look at that.
Oh, big time. This piece here is called Brotherhood. And it's not in the book, but it has been detailed on this website and all. And I wouldn't buy this at Lalou's because it was just too explicit. And I wanted stuff that I could hang. I know this sounds so petty, but I wanted things that I could hang.
No, I have that same issue too.
That you don't have to worry about. We have a lot of friends over and we have dinner parties and stuff quite often.
But which one are you talking about? Are you talking about the texture drawing one or the painted one with the animal with his head on the lap?
That one, Brotherhood. Is that other one still showing?
Yeah, but it's okay. But you think that one's too explicit?
My brother thought I was completely stupid, but this was at Lalou's also. My option was for the same price. This is how, if you're going to get practical about it, I could get the 3 pieces that I got, or I could get this, one of the two.
Oh, I see.
And with what was stacked against me, and I decided to get the others, which were a great choice anyway. I loved them. But come about 5 years later or so, this piece shows up on eBay. And I'm going, goodness gracious, something like this doesn't show up often. It wouldn't now, I don't think. Not something of this. To me, this was a complete commentary on sexuality. And, this obviously it's gay queerness because this animal, is exposed in this particular way. The man it's not going to leave. I mean, it's not going to leave. It's there forever. His eyes are shut, the blindness to it. You can't see it here, but his mouth is sewn together too. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And it's, to me, the beginning of the scratches, but they're simpler. You can see when you look at these scratches that
with the palette knife, I see it. In the background, especially.
Well, you can, it's not real extreme. It's more linear, but you can see the colors that are under it. They're almost deliberately put there. Whereas in the when we got to the Aberrats, it was very chaotic and thick. And it just so happened, I think, when Clive was doing those, that whatever would show up would just add to the organic feel of the picture. But this is a very imposing and beautiful image. And the colors, the violets, the colors come through really good on this. And the moon, I love those little Barker moons that he's got up there. And this guy is just sitting on the chair. And here is this thing.
But the sky is negative. Have you noticed that? The sky is negative color. It's a kind of a lavender background, and the stars are black, and the moon is also kind of reversed.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. The eclipse should be the circular part of the inside, unless that's the eclipse, the back part. Because the moon, actually you could have a larger, the moon's almost full, in other words, and just a sliver of the eclipse is showing through the back.
And you can see in the scratches underneath there was some of that yellow yellow color underneath that was covered with the violets and the lavender. And then when you scratch it, you see those little colors poking through, like you said.
So I had to share that because I do love that piece. It's in my brother's bedroom now. And we got into a little snit about, had some people coming over one afternoon, and the lady was like 85 years old. And I said, we have to take that off. And this house is full of art. So we can replace anything with anything, any particular time. But it's such, to me, a historic piece for Clive Barker, and it's just his beginning of, in my opinion, of starting into the oils. So it's like the early 1990s is when he, I think, really got into colored oil paints, is what I'm thinking.
It's such a gorgeous painting. And I never realized I've seen it before, but I've never noticed the detail of the eyes and the mouth being stitched closed, and the brushwork on the creature or the angel or whatever you want to call that. In this picture, it really shows, and the chest, the brush stroke on the chest of the man, the texture, the way that it defines the musculature, that looks really, really good.
It's very nice. And I got this. I was wondering who might have bought this, because the other piece that I really wanted to lose was Sanborn in Middle Age, which I may have a picture of that, but this it's in the book. But this piece here was bought by somebody associated with Clive at the time, and that's who put it. And I should have copied that letter for you. But when we got it off of eBay, he sent a letter verifying that it was part of his collection, blah, 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 but which didn't matter. But he was somebody, either an editor or a special effects man or a writer or somebody that Clive knew. And that I thought was very, very, very good. And let me just share this other one real quick.
And that way you have provenance, more stuff describing provenance, which is always useful to have to a piece of art.
Yes, if you need it, it's there. And who knows? That definitely could be an issue if somebody else is. Hang on a minute.
I see Sanborn in Adolescence down there.
Yeah, that one. Let me.
There's a sequence in the Imaginer books where you can see the 3 Sanborn paintings.
Yeah.
How can I hang on, let me get this back to meeting. Oh, stop sharing. Yeah. There we go. Okay, let me see this real quick. This is the one that I should have gotten. Okay,
that's Sanborn in Adolescence?
That's Sanborn in Middle Age. And you see there, the red dots mean somebody's already purchased it. That's when you see a red dot on an item there. This is not a good picture, but it shows the massive size of it. And all the Wolfswinkel blues. Those are the exact paints that he had on Wolfswinkel, including the red little flowers or whatever is in the trees.
Yeah.
This piece and you can see these are the sizes of some of the pieces that you see in the work in there. Let me see if I can do this other one real quick. Just 1 second.
They're black ink drawings. I love that hallway.
That's Clive's house.
Such a nice.
Or is that
this was in the house. This is the first Sanborn, which really shows a lot of thought and beautiful, beautiful colors. And it's actually bigger than.
It's enormous. Yeah, it's almost. You're not a small man, so that is pretty enormous.
No, I'm 6 feet, so that is got to be bumping 5 or more, but worthy of every inch of that canvas. Wow. That piece I thought was seriously was really amazing too. But they kind of go together, and they're all of that time. And these artists are humans, as you know, and their health affects what they can do, and what's going on around them affects what they can do. And we're just fortunate that once Clive had all the drama that went on with his health, that he could still and wanted to sit in front of a lap board and do a lot of the stuff he did. So you saw a lot, I think you saw, and I think that's the time when we were deluged with various character heads, a chunk of abstracts. If these didn't take standing in front of, these other pieces, you can imagine how you'd have to exert yourself to do them.
Right. So he started working with stuff like dripping paint and making more abstract paintings, like you said. And I even remember one of the times he was using a reed off of his yard to draw with black paint.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hey, he did it. He did it. This was him playing just like the linoleum cuts or those cuts. He's just playing to see what he can do.
Yeah. Or that the photo taken in the studio house or in his house?
That is, I can't really remember, but I just know to the right of that was the entrance into Rob Humphrey's office.
Oh, okay. So that'd be the studio house then.
Yeah. I guess so. I guess so. I have some pictures of, I love that juju bird. Do you remember that by chance? It was in, let me see if it's in here somewhere. That's another one. There's so many I would like to have. Not all of them, but it's on, where is it at?
And for people who are, interested in Clive Barker's work and would like to know where they can get some, you can definitely go to the Clive Barker archive that's run by Phil and Sarah Stokes.
Yeah.
And they usually have a section where you can look at what kind of sketches or paintings from Clive Barker they have for sale.
Unfortunately, a lot of these, I think, are more prone to exhibits now. Some of these. This piece here, I thought, it's on page 64 in the book, but I've always loved it, and it's such a simple little thing. Are you looking at page 64?
Yeah, so I think it's 63.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. See, there I go.
They don't have numbers on them, so it's
really God. But I love that piece. I had no idea it was this massive painting that this one is, and the colors are so vibrant. I know that he puts these faces on them that are so passive or no care or whatever, but they really float my boat, and that's why a lot on mine I tend to do similar things. This one's frowning a little bit. He's a little crazed, I think, but most of them aren't. But I loved that. Was probably back in 2000. Probably about, 15 years ago or something.
I always enjoy Clive's more humorous take on drawings, like this one with the two skeletons carrying off a living person.
Yeah.
And that looks like it might be a detail of a small thing, like a small piece that was bumped up. And you can still see some of the very light pencil work that you said is usually there before he applies the paint, the black ink.
You gotta love that.
I love his. I love the pieces of work that not only make me fascinated and get my mind working, but also the ones that are really funny to look at, because he's also a very funny guy. He's also got a lot of humor.
He does. And let me share you one more, and then I'll quit bugging you with these. But this is one that just the picture turned out so beautiful that I had to do it. Hang on a minute. Yeah, that's the Hellcat. Now that piece there is huge too, and very erratic and funky and scratchy and all this kind of stuff. It's signed on the back. The images that actually you see in this were actually from the negatives that I had to get for him here in Houston, because I took this piece from one of the Burt Green shows and he didn't even have it out there. Yet I guess it was still wet in the house, and to get a negative for this, and this just shows you the cost to artists and whoever involved. for me to go get the negative made of this, and it was a 4-inch negative, was $200. And that was for just that negative. And so every image that you see, I'm assuming that you see, was probably taken from that negative. Now, they, of course, paid me for it. I didn't do that for just out of the goodness of my heart. But I enjoyed getting that painting, and I didn't realize that the cat was going to become a star anyway, because he was used for the inset, for the German editions of I guess, I don't know if it was I think it was the last Abarat, the third Abarat.
Oh.
But he has not really shown up really in the books yet, so I'm expecting something to probably happen where he will eventually pop up as a character along with the Bug Boys. I'm expecting that. I'm hoping that.
Yeah. And what was that beautiful Cupid sculpture in front of it?
Oh, that is hang on just a minute.
Because that is fascinating work as well.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that is called Aquarius, and it's a huge piece, and it's made out of all metal. It's from an artist that I found in actually, it was referred to me from an associate of Luna 7 back in the days, and I have about 7 of his pieces. It's made out of nothing but metal. It's patinaed. It's amazing what you have to go through to get stuff out of some of these countries. The artist has to apply to the country in probably a month ahead of time to get approval to ship his art out. And then the drama of getting it out. And like I said, I have a handful of them. They're beautiful, beautiful work. He does great stuff with and it's kind of childish, but it's all just pure metal work. And
I love it.
Across with such emotion. So,
what country is that from?
I'm almost sure it's either Argentina. It was not far from where you were, Josiah. I don't think. I know it's not Brazil.
No, I was in Portugal, so that's on the other side.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
You're in the Spanish area.
No,
you were in South America.
Right. No.
But that's where he come from, and I couldn't believe that. And every single piece, they're heavy. They're not real expensive. I mean, you're going through the artist himself instead of a gallery, and we know the importance of galleries, but most artists can't afford the galleries, and especially in foreign countries. He's had a handful of shows in the United States, but and some of the work that I have is just amazing of what he does.
That immediately jumped out. Of course, I was fascinated with Clive's Hellcat, but that one was like, oh my God, that looks really great. So thanks for explaining that.
His name is Guillermo Rigateri, and it sounds like it's Italian or something, and maybe his dad may be part Italian or something. But they're from down there, and his work is great. You ought to take a look at it online. His website. Amazing stuff.
Definitely. So yeah, this has been a lot of interesting stuff, and I want to appreciate all the time you spent showing us originals that are in your collection, because sometimes this is the only time we get to see those originals. And
I agree. And one of the reasons I would do that, even, it's not like I'm bragging about it, because in all honesty, most people do not appreciate a lot of the art that I have. And that wasn't my purpose of buying it, and appreciation wasn't the purpose of buying it either. If you buy art, you better love it. That's the reason you buy it. You don't sit around like a stock waiting for it to appreciate or something.
100%.
And stuff like that. So, and I'm really curious. No one in our family really cares a flip about our arts and our art collections and all. And I'm going to talk to Phil and Sarah about this, because, when time comes, we are just caretakers of whatever we get, and there's no reason to let it end up in some area it doesn't belong. They should have something set up that things could be donated back to the Barker archives.
Oh my gosh. It's crazy. I was talking to Ryan the other day, and Ryan can attest to this. And I was telling you stuff like, I got some of these Clive Barker sketches, and maybe one day in the late future, I might just donate them back to the Clive Barker archive, because you just feel like you're a caretaker. I think I used that word myself. Yeah. And I was just talking to Ryan. I was like, this thing should all go back to the Clive Barker archive one day, whenever I'm like done with this or whatever.
Yeah. Well, if you Indiana Jones, that belongs in a museum.
Yeah.
Well, again, I did approach them, and I approached him for this. I talked to Ryan. I don't know. He probably mentioned it to you, Jose, too, that I did approach them for him to join us on this talk. And for health reasons, he couldn't. But along with that request is I'm also going to reach back out to the museum here in Houston with his permission. Because remember, I'm just a yahoo. I may be affiliated with them now, but I have nothing to do with exhibits, and I'm definitely not a curator and would never live up to their thoughts of what a curator could really be. But at some point in time, he's got to be willing and wanting to reach out and find out if there are institutions around the country or the world, it should be international, that would want to do this. And I cannot imagine that someone in Liverpool wouldn't want to do it, or in London wouldn't want to finance something like this and bring it together, for him. So I haven't got a response back on that angle of it. I did on the other, and he was approached with it. So we know that it's bubbling in his mind, that he knows that there are people out there that are willing to pursue it for him if he wants them to.
Of course.
Can I share with you how close Clive got to what my son actually ended up looking like here?
Hey.
Oh,
I thought
love baby
good.
pictures.
He made a pretty good prediction, right? That was a pretty good likeness.
It's eerie. It's like eerie.
I had when I went back and showed him this, I had the original iPad, and I just picked that up and showed it to him at a book signing. He's like, "Wow, I got pretty close."
Oh, what a beautiful story.
I love that, Ryan. I think I reached out to you the first time I saw that and said that would just make my day if he had stepped out of his train of thought and created something like that. And in all honesty, there's no guarantee that may not end up as a character in the next Aberrant.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that would be great.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah, I would love that.
I have this thing from Washington Post Book World that came out around the time that the Visions of Heaven and Hell came out. And it said, what would you see if you could pick inside the mind of Clive Barker, creator of such classics as Weave World, Hellraiser, and Candyman? Would you dare look? Crack open Visions of Heaven and Hell, and you have unlocked a Pandora's box of images that are certain to stay inside your head. And I think that's just a perfect line. You were talking earlier, Don, about the demon that has the basilisk that comes out and takes his hand. And you said he opened the Pandora's box, and that's what this book is like. You open the Pandora's box and your mind gets filled up by images that they're hard to get rid of in a good way, right? They want to make you go out and do something and draw stuff and just make you want to be a part of getting this creation, this creative spirit out of your body, which Clive, according to this, says we all have inside us, right? So Joanna Codler says here something about that Clive thinks that we all have this creative spark inside of us. It's just that some people might be a little more afraid of letting it out than others.
And that's what I try to do, just to butt in again, which I'm really good at doing. But that's what I try to do when I'm mentoring children of any way, is to help them find that. And if I have to use images, which we typically do, hanging on a museum wall that may be more traditional, then I can do it. I may not be able to teach it, but that to me is the most logical way in. And so that's what I try to do.
And I just want to say that it was really good to talk to you today. It was great to discuss Clive Barker's art, which means a lot to us on a personal level and an emotional level. And I love the fact that you're surrounded by art in your office. And
always.
Yeah,
it makes me nervous when I go to somebody's house and there's nothing on the wall, like that wall behind you right now. That is like completely contrary to my psyche. I want to go in there and fix that.
Well, like I said, I have so many things that need to be put on a wall right now.
Well, the era, your allotted window of procrastination is over.
I know. I've got like paintings that need to be hung up. and curtains that need to be put into this office.
It doesn't count if you just lean it up against the wall.
No, it does not. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you.
More stuff there. So I definitely had to pick up a drill and get to work and put some anchors up and start putting all this stuff, because that's what I like. I like to be surrounded by this stuff, and then you can just turn around and you could just. It's like a window to another world is hanging right behind you. It's just beckoning you, like Alice's mirror is beckoning to Alice. You know?
This whole house is like this. I guarantee you there's people that come in here that they a lot of people think if I don't have something good to say, I'm not going to say anything. So I know there's a chunk of people that come in here and going, my God, what in the hell is going on in this quarters?
Yeah.
I don't trust those people. I don't trust them.
It's an nail on the head. And thank you guys for what you do. Me supporting the podcast is in no way in compensation for what you guys have done and to carry the torch. You're carrying the torch for no selfish reasons whatsoever. And that's where it's at. That's
we're really happy to have been working with you for these years. It's been incredible. And we can't thank you enough.
All right. This was a great episode. And so, thumbs up on Visions of Heaven and Hell. You can find this book. It's out of print, but you can still find it if you look at the regular places, Amazon, Abe Books, eBay. There are some new copies. I don't know if this is because we announced that we were going to talk about this book, but there's been several copies on Amazon for like $60 or something like that.
That's what it was new, I think. So that's not any different from back, when it first came out.
Right. But in the last few months, when I was looking for copies of this book, just out of curiosity, they were way up in the hundreds of dollars. So now there's some copies for $60, which if you're quick enough after watching our episode, you might be able to snag one.
Yeah, remember always, though, when you're going to do something like that and look at prices listed on eBay and all, we all know that you should go over there and click the sold items and see what the items are selling for, not what somebody's trying to get for them, because, somebody will always try to gouge you for something. In my opinion, it's worth $100. It is worth $100. If I didn't have some here, I would reach out and probably pay that, because it is such a beautifully rich book with its issues. But other than that, it's a big book and there's a lot in it.
And I never can trust Amazon for used books anymore, because the picture they show isn't of the actual item. It's like just a generic, here's what the book is. And
well, I would hope that on a book like this, that you would be seeing the one that you're actually getting, because any of these others that use stock photos, sometimes they won't even put a photo on there.
Yeah, and then sometimes you'd get like you think you're getting a hardcover and it's a ripped up paperback, and I don't know, that just I just got kind of turned off by buying used books from Amazon anymore. Well, it used to be that was the best place to go.
Yeah,
I agree.
But thank you guys for joining us for this episode. And I hope you guys managed to snag a copy of the book if you don't have it.
Yeah.
And also don't forget to snag a copy of the Chimney Sweep's Tale.
Yes.
Exactly.
You'll be better off for it. And thank you, Jose, for doing that. That's very, very nice of you.
I just did that through Etsy while we were talking. Thank you so much.
All right.
Appreciate it, guys.
This podcast, having no beginning, will have no end. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you have subscribed. You can find the Clive Barker Podcast wherever you find audio. Show notes for this episode, as well as news and reviews, can be found at our website at www.clivebarkercast.com. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial podcast and blog that is not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Inc. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans. Watch for our annual Kickstarter fundraisers to get some cool stuff, and you can buy t-shirts on our TeePublic store. Go to teepublic.com and search for BarkerCast.
Thanks for listening.